Born a princess of the powerful Spanish Habsburgs, Maria Theresa became a pawn in Europe's great game. In 1660, her marriage to the French king ended more than 150 years of war. But once in Paris, the shy queen was swiftly cast aside, left to wander its glittering palaces in loneliness, betrayal and grief. This is her story. Maria Theresa of Spain was born on the 10th of September 1638 at the Escorial Palace outside Madrid. Her father was Philip IV, King of Spain since 1621 and ruler of the largest colonial empire ever seen in history up to that time, stretching from Mexico in the north, south to Chile and Argentina. Her mother was Elizabeth of France, a daughter of King Henry IV of France, and a brother of King Louis XIII, the ruler of France at the time of Maria Theresa's birth. Maria Theresa's parents had many children, but tragically nearly all of them died in infancy. Only one of her full siblings, Balthasar Charles, lived beyond infancy, but he too was taken too soon. In 1644, when Maria Theresa was just 6 years old, her mother Elizabeth died from complications after another miscarriage. Then, 2 years later, her older brother, aged just 16 years old, also passed away. This loss carved out a deep void in the young Infanta's heart, and with her brother's death, she suddenly became the heir to the Spanish throne. After the deaths of her mother and brother, the young Infanta drew closer to her father, who ensured she received a strict Catholic counter-Reformation education. Taught by distinguished scholars, she studied Latin and other subjects, while her father personally introduced her to politics and history. Yet her upbringing was not without warmth. She was surrounded by pets, entertainers, and the splendor of the Spanish court. This court, one of the most magnificent in the world, was enriched by wealth from the Americas and graced by cultural figures such as the painter Diego Velázquez, providing Maria Theresa with an extraordinary environment in which to grow. Yet Philip understood that no matter how well educated, a daughter as sole heir could ignite unrest and threaten the very stability of the monarchy. Because of this, in 1649, he remarried, this time to his own niece, 14-year-old Mariana of Austria. She gave birth to 2 sons, one of which, Charles or Carlos, born in 1661, would live into adulthood. This half-brother replaced Maria Theresa as the direct heir to their father and would succeed as King Carlos II in 1665. As king, he had every luxury he could ever want, and while times have certainly changed, enjoying the finer things in life doesn't have to be reserved for royalty. And that's where today's sponsor Raycon comes in. I recently got my hands on their Everyday Earbuds Classic, and I've really been enjoying them and use them basically every day. They are comfy, have great sound quality, noise cancelling, and best of all don't fall out when I'm running or in the gym. The battery life is also top notch. I haven't charged these in like 4 days, but the battery's still going strong, so it definitely is a premium product without the royal price tag. I went for the classic black with a concrete case, but they have other great choices that might be more your style. And if I don't convince you, over 3 million customers already love Raycons, and they come with a 30-day happiness guarantee, so if you don't love them, returns are easy. Click the link in the description box or go to buyatraycon.com/forgottenlives to get 20% off site-wide. That's buyatraycon.com/forgottenlives. Don't miss out. Now back to the video. To understand the way in which Infanta Maria Theresa's life would play out, we need to understand the horrendous diplomatic relationship between Spain and France in the early modern era. Both France and Spain only began to take shape as unified kingdoms in the 15th century. Before this, Spain was divided into realms such as Castile, Leon and Aragon, while France was emerging from feudal fragmentation and the 100 Years' War. With consolidation, they rose to become the most powerful kingdoms in Western Europe. In 1494, France invaded the Italian peninsula, where Spain held extensive territories in the south. This sparked a bitter rivalry between the two powers that raged for more than 150 years. Spain and France were locked in the Italian Wars for 65 years, ending in 1559 with Spain victorious and dominant in Italy, ruling Sardinia, Sicily, Naples and Milan. Soon after, France was torn apart by its wars of religion, during which Spain intervened on behalf of the Catholic League, sending troops into France in the 1580s and 1590s. After peace returned in 1598, a brief pause followed before the two powers clashed again, this time on opposite sides of the 30 Years' War that broke out in 1618. During this, their rivalry extended into northern Italy, over the Duchy of Mantua, and into Spain's own territories as France supported rebellions in Portugal and Catalonia in the 1640s. In many ways, the Franco-Spanish rivalry defined Western Europe's international politics from the 1490s until the 1650s. That is, until Maria Theresa's marriage to Louis XIV was organised. The conflict between France and Spain was so bitter that even after the rest of Europe's major powers made peace with one another and ended the 30 Years' War in 1648, the French and Spanish kept fighting. But by the 1650s, the Spanish were worn out. They lost control of Portugal, which they had acquired at the end of the 1590s, and which now once again became an independent nation, and they only barely quelled the rebellion in Catalonia. Thus, on the 7th of November 1659, they agreed to the Treaty of the Pyrenees with France, which was signed on the mountain border between the two nations. Under the terms of the treaty, Spain would cede territory in the Spanish Netherlands to the French, and there was also a marriage alliance put in place to cement the new peace. Under the terms, Philip IV agreed to marry his daughter Maria Theresa to the King of France, Louis XIV. The idea was that after 165 years of almost constant war between the French and the Spanish, the marriage alliance would lead to a more lasting peace. Spain in particular needed such an arrangement, as their coffers were empty, and they were a declining power as a result of the costly wars which they'd fought perpetually throughout the 16th and 17th centuries. Although the Treaty of the Pyrenees was agreed to in November 1659, the formal signing and meeting between the two monarchs occurred on the 7th of June 1660. Maria Theresa accompanied her father and a large entourage of Spanish courtiers and ministers who headed to the Pyrenees to sign the treaty there on the island of Pheasants, a tiny island on the river of Bidasoa on the border. There she met her future husband, who was already signalling his intent to rule as an absolutist monarch, rejecting reliance on Parliament and presenting himself as God's chosen representative to govern France. When Louis first saw his future bride, he would have noticed a small, plump woman with fair skin and blonde hair, well within the beauty standards of the time. Unlike many Habsburgs, she had not inherited the pronounced facial features caused by generations of inbreeding, thanks mainly to her mother. However, she did have poor teeth, a result of her love for sweets and hot chocolate. Curiously, the pair, both 21 years old, were nearly the exact same age. Louis was born on September 5, 1638, just 5 days before Maria Theresa. By the time they met, Louis had already been King of France for 17 years, having inherited the throne in 1643, when he wasn't even 5. After the meeting on the island of Pheasants, the betrothed couple crossed the border. There, Maria Theresa bid her father a final, heartbreaking farewell, both aware they would never meet again. In parting, Philip IV reminded his daughter of her new destiny. "You must forget that you are an Infanta, and remember only that you are Queen of France." On the 9th of June 1660, they married at the small town of Saint-Jean-de-Luz in French territory, making Maria Theresa Queen Consort of France. They then progressed north slowly over the summer and only made their ceremonial entry into Paris on the 26th of August 1660, during which the people of the French capital turned out in great numbers to welcome their new queen. A strange element of Maria Theresa's marriage which should be noted is that she was marrying her double first cousin. Despite the hostile relationship between France and Spain over the years, the pair were closely related. Louis's mother was Anne of Austria. Anne's father was Philip III of Spain, Maria Theresa's grandfather. Moreover, because of the severe inbreeding between the Spanish and Austrian royal houses, two separate branches of the House of Habsburg, Maria Theresa was related to Louis in other tangled ways. To compound matters, on her direct family side, Maria Theresa's mother Elizabeth was Louis XIV's aunt. So, both were the product of Europe's royal inbreeding, and this incestuous union would only further it. Luckily though, their children escaped the crippling inbreeding that plagued other Spanish and Austrian Habsburgs, but it may have affected them in other ways, as we shall see. Maria Theresa became pregnant for the first time within a few months of marrying Louis. On the 1st of November 1661, less than 17 months after their wedding, she gave birth to their first child, a boy who they named Louis after his father. He would live a reasonably healthy and long life. Maria Theresa was not so lucky with her subsequent children though. Two daughters, Anne Elizabeth and Marie Anne, were born in November 1662 and November 1664. In a tragic coincidence, both died after 6 weeks in late December 1662 and late December 1664. A third child, christened as Marie Therese after her mother, lived until she was 5 years old, but she too was claimed in March 1672 from what is believed to have been tuberculosis. Two further sons, Philippe Charles and Louis Francois, were born in 1668 and 1672, and both also died in infancy. Therefore, of the 6 children Maria Theresa gave birth to, only one, her firstborn, survived to become an adult. While high infant mortality was common in the 17th century, as seen even in Queen Anne of Great Britain's tragic experiences, Maria Theresa's losses were especially severe. Her children's frailty may have been owed not only to the era's medical limits, but also to her deeply inbred lineage and her marriage to a double first cousin, which compounded those hereditary weaknesses. Maria Theresa's reign as Queen Consort of France was a peculiar one. She was well liked by her husband and the court, and was described as charitable, superstitious, and devotedly in love with her husband. She did everything she could to please him, adopting the fashions of the French court, and participating in balls and spectacles despite her natural shyness. She spent her free time surrounded by her ladies-in-waiting from Spain, her dwarves, her little dogs, and her beloved chocolate. She was also known to frequently wear high heels to compensate for her small stature, but she was clumsy and often fell over. Yet, her devotion was tested daily. Louis, a serial philanderer, maintained a string of mistresses both in Paris and later at the newly built Palace of Versailles. Maria Theresa despised many of these, and she often wept in private, but she turned a careful blind eye, never publicly confronting him. To try and make up in part for his infidelities, Louis frequently staged performances of comedy, particularly Spanish comedy, which he knew she loved. Surrounded by a court full of French aristocrats, Maria Theresa formed a close bond with her mother-in-law, Anne of Austria, the widow of Louis XIII, and her Habsburg cousin. With Anne, Maria Theresa could speak Spanish, pray, visit churches, and perform charitable works away from the prying eyes of the French court. She affectionately called her Dia, but Anne's death in January 1666 was a devastating loss, removing a key ally and protector. After Anne's passing, Louis no longer bothered to hide his affairs, especially after falling under the spell of Madame de Montespan in the autumn of 1666. Beyond this, her primary role as Queen Consort was to try and mediate relations between France and Spain. Her husband was determined to expand his kingdom and ultimately aimed to extend the eastern border all the way to the River Rhine in the Netherlands and western Germany. This would necessarily bring France into conflict again with Spain, which still controlled the Spanish Netherlands, which basically overlapped with modern-day Belgium. The Spanish also controlled the Franche-Comté, or Free Country, in what is now eastern France. Maria Theresa was placed in a very difficult position in May 1667, when her husband went to war with her native country to try and claim these lands. The War of Devolution was ultimately a short conflict in which the French overran the Spanish Netherlands. By May 1668, peace terms were patched up whereby Spain ceded a large chunk of the Spanish Netherlands to France. The peace terms may have been even more punitive for the Spanish had Maria Theresa not been able to moderate her husband's demands. Maria Theresa would not live to be an elderly woman. In July 1683, she developed a severe abscess in her armpit. A fever then rose, and her physicians opted for the standard medical procedure at the time of bloodletting. The incision may have struck a large vein or artery, and she died from the procedure on the 30th of July at 44 years of age. Her last words were, "Since I have been queen, I have had only one happy day." Louis XIV soon married one of his long-standing mistresses in private, though the marriage was never made public, and they didn't have any legitimate children. This meant that Maria Theresa's sole surviving child remained the only heir to the throne. The Grand Dauphin, or Great Prince as he was known, lived down to 1711. However, he failed to outlive his own father Louis XIV, who lived to 1715. In the end, when he died, it was a great-grandson of Maria Theresa, the Grand Dauphin's grandson, who succeeded as King Louis XV. The direct line of the Spanish royal family died out in 1700 when Maria Theresa's half-brother Carlos II died in his late 30s, in part owing to health complications brought about by severe inbreeding. When he passed away, Philip of Anjou, a son of the Grand Dauphin and grandson of Maria Theresa, succeeded as King Philip V of Spain. Thus, Maria Theresa's marriage to Louis XIV in 1660 not only helped cement peace between France and Spain, 40 years later, it saw a member of the French royal family succeed as King of Spain. Thank you so much everyone for watching this video on Maria Theresa of Spain. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you thought of life down below in the comments, and if you have any suggestions, also let me know down below in the comments. Again, a big shout out to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Make sure to use my link down below to buy your own pair. Anyway, I hope you guys are subscribed and have notifications turned on to get all my videos as soon as I upload them. Anyway, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.